release of 92,000 documents coming out of the military. We are joined now by a round table of people. Dan Ellsberg, the most well-known whistleblower in the United States, is joining us from Mexico. Stephen Gray, independent journalist who interviewed Julian Assange this weekend, is with us from London. We are also joined by Matthew Ho, former Marine Corps captain in Iraq and former State Department official in Afghanistan. And Rick Rowley is with us here in New York, who's just returned from Afghanistan. He's with Big Noise Films. Rick, your observations of what this 6 years of document release means based on what you've seen in Afghanistan.
Well, I mean, what these documents prove is that the U.S. military has been whitewashing the war in Afghanistan for years, and that most of the media has been along for the ride. They've systematically covered up civilian casualties. They've covered up the successful attacks by the Taliban and their significance, and they've covered up the violent criminality of the security forces that we've created there, security forces that are preying on Afghan civilians. I mean, the picture that emerges from these documents is, on the one hand, of an insurgency that is resilient and adapting and that is winning the war on the ground, and on the other hand, of an Afghan state that we've constructed there that looks less like a government and looks more like a patchwork of warlords and criminal gangs that's extorting the local population and that has become more hated in many parts of the country than the Taliban, who they replaced. A third interesting thing that these documents do is they put flesh on a process that we've been tracking along with reporters like Jeremy Scahill for some time, of a transition to what some people call a special forces war, an entirely covert and classified war that's conducted with drone strikes and midnight raids and targeted assassinations, where everything is classified, there are no media embeds, and there's very little accountability. I mean, I think that is the trajectory that this war is taking right now. The White House has responded. They haven't denied anything here. They haven't even denied the conclusions that people are drawing about how terrible the war has been there. Their response has been that this is old news. We knew about this a long time ago, and that, in fact, Obama's war, Obama's surge, the new war that began in December 2009, has changed everything. Well, I came back from Afghanistan 10 days ago, and while I was embedded with the Marines in Marja and elsewhere in the country, I can tell you that this picture matches perfectly with what's going on the ground there right now. In Marja, which was supposed to be the poster child of this new campaign, Marja, it's a small farming community where 2 Marine divisions were sent in to try to prove that this war was still winnable. Those 2 Marine divisions have been pinned down for months. We were there at the beginning of an operation called Operation Cobra that was sending in reinforcements, a couple extra Marine companies to try to push out their security perimeter. But the Obama surge has completely derailed. They haven't brought security to Marja. They have 1 to 3 kilometers of security around their forwarding operating bases. And the biggest disaster is that the government that they've brought in and tried to stand up, the famous government in a box that was going to roll out right after the Marines cleared the ground, has disappeared. The officials refused to deploy from Kabul and disappeared. Only the mayor comes in, Mayor Haji Zaire, who's brought in by helicopter by the Marines and set down in the middle of shuras and meetings that they set up, and then bundled back into a helicopter and flown out. And this guy, Haji Zaire, he's an expat who lived in Germany for years and spent 5 years in jail for attempted murder in Germany. I mean, that's the caliber of people who we've brought in to make the leaders of this of the new Afghanistan that we're building. I mean, it's an abject failure as far as a nation-building operation on the ground. And whether you're talking about the last 10 years of the war or 2010, I mean, the picture doesn't change.
Matthew Ho, you are the highest level-ranking government official to quit over the war in Afghanistan. You were speaking this weekend in Las Vegas at Netroots Nation. Your response to this massive document release?
That was just an excellent summary we just heard by Mr. Riley. I think the thing to take away from this is the lack of attention paid to the war by the American public, the lack of involvement by the American media in this war for the last 7 or 8 years, and most damningly, the lack of oversight by our Congress on this war. What these documents show, and it provides a very valuable historical record, and this is really a treasure trove for historians for years to come, because it documents daily the actions of the war. And one thing I would be very hesitant, I want to push people on, is understand what war is. You know, that axiom of war is hell. I hope people learn from these documents that's exactly it, and not attach moral colorations of good and evil to these reports. But this is the basic nature of warfare, and this is what's been like, and it's been consistent since really '04 in terms of how poorly things have been going on in Afghanistan. And I shouldn't say consistent because every year, as we've increased troops, it's gotten worse and worse. So I think these documents are providing a valuable service. But like I said, the main point takeaway is that why weren't we paying attention to this these last 5 or 6 years? Where was the media? Where was the American public's interest? And most importantly, where was that congressional oversight?
Matthew Ho, you're a Marine Corps captain. You served in Afghanistan as a government official. What were you most shocked by in these reports?
I wasn't shocked by anything. These are your standard reports that the military produces internally for a host of reasons. These are reports that are done on a daily basis. They're reports that are done based upon intelligence activity or based upon what we call significant activities or SIGACs. So it really was just a very similar to the things I saw in both Iraq and Afghanistan in terms of reporting. The daily actions, the actual what occurs in the course of a day at war. That's what these documents show. I certainly have not gone through as many as I should by now, but they seem to be your standard reports that the military uses to communicate internally with itself.
I want to turn to Gareth Porter. Can you talk about